So he got on his computer and he showed me this and he said, we've not done this before, but we'd be really psyched to do this in your van. I was like, well, go for it. And so I'm looking forward to adding an extra probably 16 inches when I stack the mattresses and fold the bed frame on top of itself. So it's not really a Murphy bed. I don't know. It's a Mikey bed or kind of thing.
What's the hardest part about building a van? It's figuring out how to fit a kitchen, bedroom, and workspace into under 80 square feet. Today, Mike is working on that exact problem with the Site 7 design team. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. This is episode 4 of Mike's Van Build podcast.
Hey, there we go.
Welcome back to Mike's Van Build podcast. I'm Jerem from Van Life Outfitters, and we're documenting every step of Mike's professional van build. Today, we're getting into one of the most important parts, the layout. How do you design a space that feels like a home, functions like a Swiss Army knife, and can withstand life on the road? That's what today's episode is all about. Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Now let's drop in on the conversation I had with Mike. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us again.
Oh, yeah. Ready to go.
Okay, today's all about design. So let's start off with priorities. As you were heading into the design phase, what were the most important things on your mind?
Well, just like the previous build of Willow, I wanted a garage space. Even though on this build, I'm going to have a bike rack on the outside of the van, I also want to have the luxury to be able to put the bikes indoors. Design-wise, I wanted a more open feel. I wanted to feel like I had more space once I got into the van. I wanted to utilize the overhead storage above the driver and passenger seat. I wanted to have a front porch and awning, that kind of stuff. I wanted to have adequate storage for, I could travel for a week with 2 t-shirts and then, a couple other items. So I don't need a ton of storage, but it's more my bike clothes, bike gear, food and things like that. So I need to take into account storage, the kitchen, even though I'm going to be cooking outside, you're still going to have pots and pans and plates and bowls and cups and things like that. So, where are you going to stash your groceries, that kind of stuff. So those are the things I was kind of really considering.
So how did the team get started? You and the Site 7 team, was it pen and paper or was there digital like CAD? Well, how did actually the design come to be?
Well, interestingly enough, Site 7 has a great website, and they have images of all their past builds, vans they've done for other people. I don't know, there might have been 10 or 15 vans, maybe more. And interestingly, as I went through them, I kept seeing little things in each van that I really liked. Well, I like the size of that cabinet. I like the way these cabinets up top are not, they're square, but they were cut off in the front. I liked how this kitchenette was set up. So I literally went through probably 6, I went through all their vans, but 5 of them or 6 of them had little features in them that I liked. And so I had written to them, I said, hey, go look at your van Maple. I like the cabinet as you come in the doorway and that little area where you can stash your shoes in. They had a couple other vans that I said, if you could put that cabinet together with that cabinet and make it one, that would be really kind of nice. I pointed out, basically they do a lot with kind of a maple colored wood. They actually use maple on the ceiling. It's probably Baltic birch for their cabinet fronts. They do tweed fabric for their walls and things. And they use the lawn seal coin flooring, which are all things that I actually really like to begin with. So in that sense, it was like, well, what color tweed do I want? And what color flooring do I want? And they consistently do this kind of gray flooring, which I actually had in Althea, my Volkswagen van. So I was like, I kind of like that. It feels nice. It's not bright, but it's not dark. It's warm. And so I basically sent them an email and said, and pictures of all the things for their van. I said, let's work all of that into ultimately what I would think would be comfortable for me and for Amy in our new van.
And so they took all that feedback, and it's pretty nice to get to work with a builder who's willing to make adjustments like that. That it wasn't cookie cutter, it sounds like.
No, exactly. And I think, most builders are going to have sort of packages. There's your kitchen package, your electrical package, here's your sleeping package, here's your water package. And they're going to, again, there's only so much room in a van. There's only so many ways you can style it out. And they're going to place these bits and pieces in the sort of sensible locations, or the more common locations. You're going to open the slider and you're probably going to see some sort of kitchenette in front of you, a sink and a fridge, which is exactly what I wanted. Because when I opened the slider, unlike Willow, I got in the van, I turned to the left, and I had to bend down between two cabinets to open the fridge. On the new van, I want to be able to open the slider, and there's the fridge door on the wall across from me. I can open it, load it up with groceries, step in, I'm good to go. The sink's right there. I wanted to make sure that, there's a useful space where the sliding door opens to an extent. You don't want to have too little room to get in, but why not use some of the room? And I knew I had to have a drop down table on the back of the cabinet. So there's certain things
That
that,
comes out into the
right.
outside of the van, right?
Yeah, because I want to cook outside. So there's certain things for me that were just givens. And fortunately, they had some variation on that in some of their already built vans. And so the willingness for them to take bits and pieces and my own suggestions, ideas, feedback, what I had experienced in the previous vans made it for a really nice working relationship in terms of moving forward with a design that I felt was going to be most comfortable for Amy and I when we're on the road, whether it's for a day, 10 days, or 3 months, that we're going to be comfortable.
And so did they take all of that feedback and put it into a digital mock-up for you to
They
finalize the
they
design?
actually did, yeah, and they sent it to me, uh, and then that the day I dropped it off, we went through it and we actually tweaked the heck out of it. We made changes, and one of the interesting changes we made was they kind of customized a cabinet based on what I had described I wanted. Normally, a cabinet's just a simple rectangle, so they did a partial rectangle, then did an indent and made part of the cabinet more narrow. It had drawers in it, so that it created more space between the two sides of the vans, because you have cabinets on one wall, cabinets on the other. And instead of having them all a standard cabinets, I know 24 inches deep, so there's 48 inches in a van that's only so wide. So to make an indentation and a custom cabinet that was only 16 inches created some more space from side to side. So we were able to do that. One of the things I shared with them in my previous van is that the garage was so big and the water tank was placed in a way that made the bed so big that the van felt small. And granted, I wanted a big garage, but I didn't want a big garage and then a water tank that created more space. And I almost had a king size bed in Willow, which was great, but then it's less living space. So they actually said, we've got this interesting idea. What if we hinged part of the bed frame? Because you have a bed frame and then you set your mattress on top. And what if we made the mattress in two pieces and you could stack the mattress and then hinge the bed back and put it under? It would increase the living space, and we'll put another bench seat over here.
Nice.
Yeah. So they're on the computer. They got their little design thing. And then on the one other bench seat, which was sort of next to where all my electrical and water was, they instead of putting it upright, they put a slight tilt in it. So when you were sitting, you could lean back and kind of recline against the cabinet that housed my electrical, my water.
Mm,
And a lot of van companies will design a van to try and balance out the weight of the two sides of the van, because you do a lot of stuff over the rear wheel wells of vans. That's normally where the cabinets are going to be, where you're going to house your electrical on one side, your water and some storage on the other side. And then, of
right.
course, your bed is on top. Interestingly enough, these guys chose to put electrical and water all on one side. And
Huh.
because when I talked to them, I said, I mountain bike a lot. I've got gear. I need storage in the garage. they chose not to put anything over the passenger side wheel well other than this gorgeous cabinet with storage. And so one of the again, it was a custom design feature, is that more often than not, you have to kind of reach in the garage and then open the cabinets from the inside. They
Right.
actually did doors on the back of the cabinet. So I could open this door and look down this long chute to put my lawn chairs, to put my flat jacks. I've got my tools in
Nice.
there, and my outdoor carpet. And then when everything's in there, there's a couple hooks I'm going to have where I can put my bike helmet and my bike shoes and my stinky bike clothes. And I don't have to climb into the garage to open it from the inside. I've got back doors outside the back door. So, yeah, the luxury of having them receptive to things that I'm dreaming up, and there are some people say, oh, we can't do that. We can't do that. These guys are like, yeah, we could do that. We could do that. Let's try that. And so I think, interestingly enough, my vision, their willingness to be creative, and their skill to make things, they've come up with things they really like themselves. They're like, hey, we might do this in another van. I was like, cool. Thanks. Don't mention it. you know?
It seems like most of your learning, and this has been a key topic for the podcast so far, is because of experience. You've been
Yeah.
in lots of vans.
Yeah.
Was there anything when you saw the digital mock-up? Was there anything in particular that specific experience helped you make some decisions or changes to it changed your mind somehow?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, two things. The luxury to be able to have other vans on site to actually see, touch, and be in the space that my van is going to be, in terms of, it was a Sprinter 144. They had a couple other Sprinters on site. And they said, well, see, this is how this is going to feel if we did a cabinet like this. This is how it's going to feel if we do a cabinet like that. And then to have the guy, Jammer, who does the layout, to go up to the computer and literally manipulate things to change. Well, do you want us to go like this, or do you want to go like that? You want to go like this? And again, when I did Willow, they sent me a design and some measurements. I was like, all right, go ahead. I didn't care. I wasn't thinking, because Althea, I literally bought an IKEA file cabinet and put a piece of butcher block on top of it and some hooks on the side, and that's all I knew. That was fantastic. So it's like going into a spec house. When you're going to buy a home, you look at the kitchen, you look at the size of the bedrooms, what fixtures do they have in the bathroom, and the fact that most of this stuff was on site and I could see it and move around in it. There were some changes on site even after I thought I had it all figured out.
You've mentioned several topics about the layout of the van. We talked about the bed and the garage, a little bit about the cabinets. What about windows? What kind of decisions did you make about windows?
Well, and this is an interesting discussion I have with people that call into van life outfitters. The whole idea being stealth. When you got lots of windows, it's not overly stealth. If you want to be stealth, put Bob's Electrical on the side and don't have any windows. But for me, I need light. I need sunlight. I'm an early riser. I've never had a curtain in my house. Actually, I've got some blinds here because when I'm working, I need to get the sun out of the room in the house. So I love to have natural light. So I have a beautiful window in the slider. Unlike Willow, this window opens on the slider.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and it's a type of window that opens. You can have it open when it rains. And this was a recommendation by Site 7. As you open the slider and look in behind the driver's side door, there's a full window there. Granted, I could have had a wall there and shelves to put spices and stuff around the kitchen, but I want sunlight. I wanted two windows out the back door, primarily for backing up and seeing what the hell's behind me, but also to let light in. And then I did the flares and I put windows on the side. Again, I went with the awning windows. Willow had just sliders, and so when it rained, the rain would come in. So if you think about, again, here's another thing I didn't think about in the previous build. How are my windows going to open? Are they going to have screens on them? The other beautiful thing about this van is I have installed screen doors on the slider and the back door, which I didn't do on Willow. I had these ones that sort of fit magnetically, but they were a beast to put on. So I went with these really cool screens by a guy who actually lives here in South Carolina named Dutch. And I'm going to do a quick little plug for his company. Bugwall are his screens. And, you know, we use, just to see them on someone else's van. I was like, wow, it really looks nice. It looks like someone's home. Roll out your awning, you got your screen door, you can, just sit out there. And so that was also a thing that they showed me. I was like, yeah, I got to go with those this time.
Let's stay outside. What were some other exterior decisions you had to make in this design phase?
Well, again, there were some things different than when we were done on Willow. Willow had prefixed, running boards or side steps. I mean, these sprinters sit pretty high, so you have a secondary step to step on. Site 7 does these electrical drop down ones, which I'd not really explored much. So you open the door and all of a sudden a step appears, and they even light up at night, which I was told. I was like, that's kind of cool. On Willow, I had a spare tire ladder on the back. This van, I just went with just a simple ladder on the back door. I went with, I stayed with the Mercedes wheels. I went with some aftermarket tires. Site 7 showed me they're gorgeous. They make their own roof racks, and it's got a light bar in the front. And I went with one of their custom roof racks. Like I said earlier, I added an air conditioner. I had the Max Air fan. And one of the beautiful things is when we talked about it, they said, yeah, we can design it in a way that on the roof rack, we can have your air conditioner. I want Starlink. So they said, we can put your Starlink here. We can put your Max fan here. And then along the sides, we can put 2 solar panels. So that was really nice. So they're really sort of dialing in the roof, which, I think some people pay attention to the roof, but not a lot. I'm doing the Fiamma awning, and they said, the Fiamma awning, their factory lights are like walking into a Walmart, but we put a coating over the light. Yeah, it's a more gentle light. And then they put a couple lights, one above the sliding door and one out the back door, just like kind of large puck lights. I don't know what they call them, but they said this is kind of a standard feature on our Site 7 vans. And of course, in the front, they have a light bar, this row of lights, which if you want to blind a deer or someone in front of you, you can hit a switch apparently and light the whole
apparently.
So I was like, yeah, go for it. If that's part of what you guys sort of offer on your builds, I wanted to go with it. So less exterior mods in terms of the design, but still tastefully done and useful.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that you don't have a step ladder with a spare tire, right? Do you have a spare tire somewhere though?
Yeah, it's underneath the underside, which is a common
you just
place.
kept it in the normal place.
Yeah, which is a common place. People will put a water tank. They make water tanks that go in the spare tire compartment because so many people, it looks cool to have the spare tire on the back, but it also makes sense. And the reason being, if you found yourself off-road and you're driving down a rutted road and it goes like this, you might be in a position where there's no room to drop your spare tire, because you're not on a standard paved road. So I had that on the previous van. On this van, I wanted to have an exterior bike rack as well as the option to put my bikes in the garage. And so I didn't want to have a spare tire carrier on the back.
Just for room.
Yeah.
The solar panels sound different than I've seen before.
Yeah.
Is that common and I just haven't seen them yet?
Well, I wasn't most people, it seems like, want to maximize the amount of solar they have on the roof. And they run into a problem in terms of design and layout. When you add an air conditioner and a couple other components, there's only so much room. So I noticed when I was, sort of investigating more into Site 7, that they never really offered a ton of solar. I think I have 180 or 200 watts of solar. So just enough to sort of be a trickle charge or to, add to the battery, kind of runs my refrigerator indirectly. And so just, long, narrow solar panels on either side of the roof rack. And I was like, cool. They showed me one of their vans, like, looks good to me, you know. And again, because I went with the secondary alternator for charging, I don't need to be so reliant on solar as a source of charging. But there was roof space. There wasn't enough roof space for me to lawn chair up there. So I was like, yeah, just if that's what you guys do. And so, whereas I had a lot of input into the design and the layout, they also had their own sort of go-to things that they did. And which I was like, yeah, cool. If that's your thing and you do it well, go for it. You know?
You also mentioned in our pre-call that you did something a little unusual with shore power. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, more often than not, you're going to look at the side of a van, and on the back, usually driver's side rear panel, you're going to see a place with a box where you plug in, and there might even be a little water fill spout. Site 7 actually does it underneath the back corner of the van, so you don't see it, which is really kind of nice. And people are like, well, what about, weather and rain and mud bumping up? These shore power inlets got beautiful caps on them, and they've done it on all their vans. I was like, yeah, that's nice. It's a little more stealth, even though it's clear that I'm camping in my van if I'm parked downtown somewhere, kind of thing. So that
Stealthiness was not one of your high priorities when you
yeah,
mentioned
no,
up
I
front.
mean, I'm going to be at a trailhead. I might be at a campground, and if I'm at a trailhead or a ski resort parking lot, or a Walmart or a Cracker Barrel, it's going to be good to go. I'm not trying to get away with anything. If the rest area says no sleeping overnight, someone knocks on the door. Dude, I just pulled in an hour ago. You had a sign up the road that says don't drive when you're drowsy. So I needed to pull over. So give me an hour and let me sleep. And speaking of sleeping, here's another cool thing that Site 7 did. I told them how I was talking about this earlier, how my bed took up a lot of room in the previous build. And unlike Willow, I wasn't going to have a little bench up front and a table. I was going to have a bench in the back. And they're like, we could actually put a bench under the bed on the other side. I was like, yeah, but how the hell am I going to sit on a bench under the bed? And they said, we can put a hinge on the bed frame, and what you can do is, because you're going to have a two-piece mattress, is you can flip that back underneath the mattresses to increase the space. I was like, what do you mean? And so we got on his computer and he showed me this and he said, we've not done this before, but we'd be really psyched to do this in your van. I was like, well, go for it. And so I'm looking forward to adding an extra probably 16 inches when I stack the mattresses and fold the bed frame on top of itself. So it's not really a Murphy bed. I don't know. It's a Mikey bed or kind of thing. A Mikey, where we can increase the space. So if we're hanging out and Amy and I, even though she's a nurse, she still has to get on her computer to do some work. If we want to, we're going to have two locations for a table. We're going to have a spot where you can mount a table when the seats are swiveled in the door. And then we're going to have a separate spot where you can take that post, set it in the mount on the floor, and have the table in the back. Or we could eat in the back if we wanted to. So that's a really cool design thing that I didn't even think about or even imagine that could happen. So I'm really psyched to see how this is going to work. And so, yeah, there you go. You work with a builder who wants to be creative and who is sort of picking up on your creative energy. You're like, hey, now we're doing things we've never done before. you
I
know?
love that.
Yeah,
That bench is stealthy,
yeah.
hidden under there.
Yeah, and I'm going to
Um,
have a pull-out tray still. So when we were talking about it, they said, well, the thing is, we could do a short tray, um, or if we have a longer tray, if you're sitting in the bench, you're going to have to put your feet in the tray. And I was like, well, I don't care as long as my bikes can fit there. So again, that willingness to sort of explore new ideas, and for them to say, yeah, we'll try that. Let's mock it up on the computer, and we'll give it a go.
that's great. Well, you spent, it sounds like, a ton of time getting ready for the van, designing it
Yeah, yeah.
to meet everything you want to use it for. Let's move to our lessons learned section. Now that you've gone through that process, it's not your first van, you've done a few. Uh, what are the key takeaways during design that our audience can learn from?
Well, again, as you said, I've been in a couple vans, and one of the reasons I sold Willow is because um, it felt sort of just too clean and monochromatic, or just it was all one thing. So I learned that I'm more comfortable in a multi-textured space, and Site Seven offered that, from the metal framing around the cabinets to the tweed fabric on the walls. I mean, we probably spent Amy and I spent an hour looking at tweed samples, and I like kind of sage colors and earth tones, and again, just trying to figure out the colors. So the willingness to spend the time to is a lesson I learned, to discover what you're really going to like, because it's not a big space, but it can be really comfortable, and you could be in that space for a while. So one of the lessons I learned is I really have to think about how I'm going to enjoy it. What's going to make me feel good? What's going to contribute to my happiness if I'm sitting in a rainstorm at a parking lot, in the van? Are those things? And Willow had parts of that, but again, it just didn't vibe with me like I really wanted to. And after being at Site Seven, it just reinforced that lesson of, you know, go live on the road, go try some vans, go to a festival, look at other people's vans, look at your own home. What do you like in your own house? There's a reason why your house is decorated the way it is. It's because you feel good there, and I definitely feel good in the van just because I'm on the road. But after a bike ride, when I come back and make something to eat, and I'm sitting back, maybe just watching Netflix, I'm like, yeah, this is my house. I really like it. So that would be my biggest lesson is uh, try it out. And then in the design process, to create a space where you don't feel claustrophobic, and it's spacious enough that you're just really comfortable. It's a big ask, but it's possible.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're getting better every time, and I can't wait to see this thing come together.
I'm so psyched. And the last thing I'm going to do is get into say, now I'm going to do this in my next van. No, this has been a fun process, and I'm not even crossing my fingers. I'm really confident that the amount of time and energy that's been put into it, through thinking about it, through talking to other people, through going and seeing other vans, that I'm going to be one happy camper.
So to speak.
Yes, sir.
Outstanding. Well, this episode was all about design, and the next episode we get to start talking about construction, walls, wiring, actually making some holes.
I didn't want to cut any holes in my van. Leave that to the professionals.
Leave that to the pros. So we're going to start seeing it coming together, and I can't wait. Thank you so much for spending time with us again today.
All right. Till next time. Thanks, Jerem.
Right on. Thank you for listening to episode 4 of Mike's Van Build podcast. We put up a bunch of photos, links, and product info from this episode on vanlifeoutfitters.com/podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell a friend, and stay tuned for more van build stories. I'm Jerem from Van Life Outfitters. We'll see you next time.